Welcome back. I'm staff writer reporter Bri Dix here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. We're in the Bucs studio presented by Ticketmaster for this week's edition of Road to the Draft.
This is the mock draft I just put up yesterday.
Yes.
And I'm glad you're here because you did one the week before, so we can kind of compare notes a little bit as we go along. So 2 weeks earlier, I was still pounding the drum on the Titans are going to sign a veteran starter. They're going to take a generational talent and worry about the quarterback of the future next year.
Right.
That has become increasingly clear that that's not true. They have not signed any veteran starter. They're not even apparently trying. They're clearly set on Cam Ward. I think you'd find nobody that disagrees with that at this point. So Cam Ward to the Titans to start the draft. Is that what you did as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like there's not a whole lot of consensus in this draft, but it seems to be
this one is
that
now.
Cam Ward, is going to Nashville.
Now, eagle-eyed observers would think that we have our board wrong here because the Browns are 2 and the Giants are 3. But in my most recent draft, I made a trade with the Browns trading up one spot to the Giants to make sure the Giants trading up one spot to make sure nobody else jumped them because they wanted to get quarterback Shedeur Sanders. It's the always truism of the draft that the quarterbacks rise. And you've seen Shedeur Sanders' supposed draft stock go up and down in recent weeks, but it only takes one team to really want him, especially at the team near the top that really needs a quarterback. Now, I made this trade, full disclosure, right before they did the Russell Wilson signing. They already had James Winston, but he signed for what is clearly backup money. But then Russell Wilson signed. He's obviously going to be their starter this year. Right. And so that might make me a little less sure they're going to trade up a spot, but I still think that neither of those signings takes them out of the quarterback of the future conversation because Russell Wilson's only under contract for 1 year and it's middling starting money. So he's clearly a bridge quarterback. I can still see them going for the quarterback of the future. And the Browns trade down and get Abdul Carter.
Okay,
so filled in some of these others. I wanted to point out number 6 because I think this is becoming, I've done it 2 drafts in a row and I think it's becoming a popular pick. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back, really dynamic talent, right? Like one of the best, maybe the best running back prospect to come out since Saquon, depending on how you feel about Bijan Robinson. This is a team that got their new quarterback in Geno Smith. They've got some nice weapons. They have Brock Bowers, but they had the worst rushing attack in the league. Yeah. So you apparently had a slightly unusual pick at this spot, right?
Mine was a little bit unorthodox, but I kind of similar with what you did with the Giants. I went ahead and still did Shedeur Sanders going to the Raiders.
After the Geno trade.
Yes, but Geno Smith's 35 years old. I think, they have to look to the future, and I think it's been kind of noted and well documented, Tom Brady's relationship and kind of been that mentor to Sanders. So if Pete Carroll, if John Spytek like his ability, and I think he can kind of be that developmental prospect. So I still like him going to the
Well, then where did you put Ashton Jeanty?
I had him going to the Bears at number 10.
I
think they've kind of bulked up the interior of the offensive line.
That's true.
Get a guy to kind of take some of that pressure off Caleb Williams and kind of reinvigorate.
All right. I can see it. Attack. I really could see Ashton Jeanty going to a whole lot of different places in this range right here. I think his stock is now top 10. Yeah, that's the most common one, right? But I think at this point, a lot of mock drafts are having him go before Dallas even has a shot. The reason I wanted to highlight Dallas's pick is because I gave them Jihad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker. And the reason I point that out is I think that's a guy that the Buccaneers would be interested at 19. But I have not done a draft in weeks where he's still available at 19. So, and what did you do here for the Cowboys?
I had the Cowboys, since Jeanty was already off the board, I had them taking Luther Burden, kind of adding another target for Dak Prescott. And I think Missouri kind of used their offense to kind of build off of his yards after catch ability. And I see the Cowboys kind of diversifying his usage a little bit, and I think he could be a good complement to CeeDee Lamb.
All right, okay, cool. Moving on down a little bit. The reason I wanted to point out this pick, this is another trade. We had to trade, in my mock draft, we had a trade here, so you'll see those two aren't in the normal order. The Cardinals seeing Will Johnson fall a little bit, trade up to make sure they get their guy. And here the Rams traded from 26 with Seattle up to 18, and they want Jahdae Barron. And to me, I think the reason being there is after Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron and Travis Hunter, if you count him as a quarterback, I think there's a gap between that and the next group of cornerbacks, and so they make the bold move to move up here to get the guy rather than wait for whatever falls to them.
Right.
I think Jahdae Barron's a great player, and I point this out because that's a guy I would love to see the Buccaneers get at 19, but, well, they don't here. Because, and I honestly, the Rams or any team that is trading up to 18 to take a guy like Jahdae Barron is probably thinking, hey, he could go at 19. So that's why I think that would happen. And now we get to the Bucs pick.
Right.
And that is, for me, Donovan Ezeraku. Boston College edge rusher. I love the idea of us getting an edge rusher in the first round, particularly if Jahdae Barron and Jihad Campbell are already off the board.
Right.
This is a guy with lots of production. And if it gets down to it, if you ask me, Todd Bowles, Jason Light, all of their people working for them, when it comes to the idea of production versus like raw skills, like a Shamar Stewart kind, I think they would tend to lean towards production.
Right.
Now, we know that Mike Green had 17.5 sacks?
Yes.
He had 16.5 sacks last year, 21 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles. This is a guy that had the production, and then he went to the combine, and he did quite well at the combine, particularly in the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle drill.
Okay.
And those are measuring both like your acceleration, your change of direction, and your quick, short space speed, which is what you need out of a pass rusher, right? So that's why I think you look at him, he's 6'2", 248. He says he can probably get up to 255 and still play the same. There maybe is a little bit of a question about how well he sets the run against the edge against the run. But, in our rotation, we already have a couple of guys that do that well, like Yaya Diaby, right? And Anthony Nelson.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the edge guys.
Gotcha.
Okay, so if you could throw a guy in there that maybe need to work on his run defense a little bit, but he's a pure pass rusher, I think there's room for that in the Buccaneers edge rush rotation. Now you add him, you got Hassan Reddick, and you've taken what was, as Todd Bowles himself has pointed out a couple times already since the season, they need to get more pressure off the edge specifically, and when only rushing 4. So you've taken a spot that was a bit of a weakness for the Bucs last year, and now maybe you can turn it into a strength. I always love the idea of these double dips at positions, or in free agency in the draft. So you got Hassan Reddick and now Donovan Ezeraku. Now, you had a draft a week before. Who did you give us?
So I kind of had the same theology when I did mine, and I don't think you can have too many edge rushers, and I don't think necessarily getting Hassan Reddick, having Anthony Nelson, I don't think that prohibits you from getting an edge, and I just think this draft particularly is so deep at the edge position. So in terms of value, I really liked in mine, Mikael Williams was still there at 19. And I think he's a guy that, Todd Bowles has talked a lot about wanting a guy that finishes plays, gets to the quarterback, but also disrupts, whether that's getting strip sacks, whether that's getting the batted passes. And that is exactly what Mikael Williams has done throughout his tenure. And again, he doesn't have a huge sample size, but you have the explosion, you have the speed. Over 30% of his tackles resulted in a loss. He finishes through the whistle, and I just think he's kind of a Todd Bowles and Jason Light type of player.
Well, as you can see in my mock draft, he was already off the board.
Yeah.
So they would have to trade up to get him if they want. So in this case, he's gone. We go with him. Now, I wanted to point out one more pick after us, and that's the Steelers, because I gave them Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, and I think there's a bit of divisiveness about him. Is this a guy you take in the high second round, or is somebody going to move on him in the first round? And again, quarterbacks tend to rise. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. They may or may not get Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
They clearly need a quarterback, and a quarterback of the future. I think this guy has impressed a lot of people with his skills. So who did you put here at 21?
I had them taking Jahdae Barron. So I had them going more of the veteran QB route as well. So obviously when I did mine, Russell Wilson was still in play. So you have potentially Aaron Rodgers. But I just think Jahdae Barron just kind of seems like a Steelers kind of guy. He's physical nickel. He can cross-train at safety. Great kind of mitigating the middle of the field. So I think I could see him having success in Pittsburgh, but I mean, he's a guy that honestly could go a lot higher. He seems to be rising. Could be a guy that the Bucs also go for at 19.
Yeah. So you put Jahdae Barron here, which means he was on the board when you took the edge rusher here. I have to admit that in my mock draft, if Jahdae Barron had made it to here, I would have taken him. but I'm always the you can't have too many corners, guys.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. You can look at the rest of it here. You can read on Buccaneers.com or on the app about why I think these picks went as they did, and we've still got a little bit to go, so we'll do a few more of these. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah. And that does it for this week's episode of Road to the Draft. And stay tuned next week for a closer look as we get closer to the draft at the end of April.